So good evening and welcome to the 2018 Brockton Area Annual Overdose Vigil. My name is Hilary Dubois and I'm the director of the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative. The collaborative is a regional coalition that includes groups from Brockton, Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, Whitman, Hanson, and Rockland working together on prevention initiatives. Before we start tonight's program, I would like to thank our sponsors, the Office of Mayor Bill Carpenter, the Champion Plan, BAMSI's Cope Center, Gandara, Bridging Lives, Whitman Hanson Will, Massasoit, Learn to Cope, High Point Treatment Center, Teen Challenge, and the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office. We also have resource tables in the back that includes information from Independence Academy, Stairway to Recovery, The Castle, Brockton Neighborhood Health Center, NORCAP, American Addiction Recovery Center, MORE, and the Lakeshore Retreat. The restrooms are located if you exit the auditorium in the back room of the tables along the right-hand wall and around the corner from the lobby. We would also like to ask everyone if they could just please take a moment to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. So this year, for the first time in my 9 years working in this role, we're holding the vigil indoors. There was a threat of a storm that hung over all of our heads, and the metaphor of that is not lost on me. In the throes of use, storms rage in individuals. There's collateral damage, and you must find coverage wherever you can. Tonight, we find covers indoors together. A team rallied together to ensure that we would be able to hold the event tonight, much like people rally around people struggling with substance use disorders. We have had to adjust tonight and realize a new normal, the way so many of us have had to do in grief. We will still have the ability to gather tonight outside following the memorial slideshow to light candles as a unified community to shed light on the impact of overdose. Last year, it is estimated that 72,000 Americans died from drug overdoses. Earlier this month, I read an article in the New York Times that indicated from preliminary 2018 data that fatal overdose rates in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts were decreasing. The article continues to talk about the work being done in the state to make a difference. It talked about how Massachusetts is seeing progress because we're talking about the issue, because we're working collaboratively, because we're thinking outside of the box. I thought, finally, I could come up here and I could stand before you and I could give you some hopeful news. But the reality of the situation is, it's just not that simple. People aren't statistics. The loss of a single person is immeasurable. It's immeasurable to their communities. It is immeasurable to their families. It is immeasurable to the people that they influenced and that influenced them. Tonight, we remember those and we honor their legacy. And we thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, Mayor Carpenter is not able to join us this evening as he is ill, but Mayor Carpenter has been a passionate advocate around providing resources to individuals and their families who are struggling, and we appreciate all of the support that his office has provided us. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, District Attorney Tim Cruz.
Thank you, Hillary. My name's Tim Cruz, and for the last 16 years, I've had the privilege of being the district attorney here in the county where I've grown up, where I grew up here as a lawyer, grew up here as a prosecutor back in the 80s, dealing with heroin back then and the challenges that it faced for people in our community. And to see the changes that have occurred over time and where we are today. And for me, that's why it's always an honor to come back to the Overdose Vigil. And it's an honor for me to remember that we should take a little bit of time to remember the people that we've lost and the people that we've loved, and as Hillary said, and the families that we've affected. And that's why my office always takes part in this vigil. And I'm not going to go through the same groups to thank as Hillary just did, thanking them all, but I also thank them all for the great work that they do every day and for continuing to work together to make sure that we can be the champions dealing with youth substance misuse prevention. It is important that we continue to have overdose prevention and youth drug prevention. And all the groups that are here, the facts group that are here, the facts group that are working in our communities, working in conjunction and with each other, working in conjunction with our Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force, which has been going now since 2015, and trying to bring in people that can all talk about the numerous issues that we're dealing with, whether they're being legislative issues, judicial issues, faith-based families, dealing with hospitals and trying to get our numbers, trying to find out the problem here in Plymouth County, the problem here in Brockton and all the surrounding communities. And we see, and we talk about numbers and things such as that, and our numbers here in Plymouth County as we continue this year are a little bit less than what they were last year. Back in 2016, we had 130 individuals pass away from fatal opiate overdoses. Last year, 138. As we speak right now, there's a couple numbers that we're still working on, but it's close to high 80s, right around 90. So we're in the same area. At the same time, however, our non-fatal opiate overdoses has really gone up high. And as I stand here right now, we're more than 1,000 this year. So a lot of the programs that we're dealing with are saving lives. And you coming out tonight, you coming out every night, working with our community makes a huge difference. Removing the stigma of this problem is incredibly important, and that's difficult too. So I thank you all that are coming out here tonight to remember your loved one who passed, your friend who passed, somebody that is no longer here with us because of this insidious disease. By facing the fear of the addiction and by coming forward with confidence, we have created change. The police now carry Narcan. There's a limit for first-time opioid prescriptions. Kids are being screened in schools for early signs of substance abuse. We're just dealing with a lot of issues in trauma-sensitive schools and trying to get in front of the kids who are the next level, the drug-endangered kids who are losing their parents or their loved ones, their guardians, to this terrible disease. And because you shared your stories and you had the courage to come forward, the police and recovery coaches here in Brockton and in Plymouth County are going door to door to offer assistance to those people with substance use disorders and their families. And that's why we're here tonight, to remember the people that we've lost, to make sure that we continue the fight and we continue the work, and we help the people that we can help. We educate the kids to keep them away from this. I am optimistic that there will come a time when this is behind us, but only with your continued support and your continued courage. So I thank you, each and every one of you, for your strength, your courage, your confidence, your perseverance to come here tonight and make a difference as we proceed down this road. Thank you for everything that you all do. Thank you.
There's so many lives struggling to fight just a little bit more, trying to provide, barely getting by, could be right next door. No one should be left alone in the dark. Hear the sound of hope, let everybody know we have the power to turn this around, and no one should be left alone in the dark. With love and a broken heart, and I know we can make the world better if we come together. You gotta believe that we can change the outcome if we join in and reach out a hand. All it takes is someone stepping forward, taking a stand. And you and I is where it starts. And you and I could be a part, feed a soul, fill a heart. Hear the sound of hope, let everybody know, let everybody know. We can change the outcome if we join in, so reach out a hand. All it takes is someone stepping forward, so let's take a stand. Won't you reach out a hand? All it takes is someone stepping forward. Let's take a stand. Oh, you and I is where it starts. You and I could be a part. You don't have to look very far. Right here is where it starts. Feed a soul, fill a heart. Feed a soul, fill a heart. Fill a heart.
Thank you, Vicki. I would like to invite Angela Kelly up to speak about her brother.
Thank you, Hillary, and Vicki for the beautiful music, and to all the organizers and leaders and community partners who've helped create this opportunity for awareness and remembrance. I'm here tonight with my parents, Linda and George, and on behalf of my sisters, Colleen and Lauren, to remember our brother, Jonathan, loved deeply and missed dearly by our whole family and his many friends, lost too soon to a long struggle with heroin and alcoholism. John died 2.5 years ago at the age of 35, though he stays in our hearts and on our minds always. Whether you're here tonight to remember a lost loved one or because someone you love continues to struggle, whether you're here as part of your own recovery or your desire to support others in theirs, please look around this auditorium and see that you are not alone. Remember that, especially in those moments of nagging sadness, worry, or doubt. We are all here to bear witness to what one another has endured and to affirm the humanity of all affected by addiction. I know that everyone we're here to remember was a whole human being who was loved dearly and will not be forgotten. They were all people with unique stories and difficult journeys, with dreams they didn't get to fulfill. People whose memories motivate us to find healing and hope for others. It's an honor to share some of my brother's story with you now, to remember that he, like your loved ones, was more than what killed him. John was a deep thinker with a big heart and a sensitive soul. He was an artist of many talents, a creative chef and a handyman, always eager to help others. He loved the ocean, animals, and giving gifts. He followed his own path, which sometimes led him to trouble, but he always stood strong in his beliefs. We miss him so much, and it still feels impossible to believe we'll never see him again. It also feels especially meaningful to connect with his spirit here tonight because this campus, where we're all gathered, contains so many cherished memories for my brother and our family. When we were growing up in Brockton, our mom taught here at Massasoit, and looking back, I see that some of John's proudest and happiest moments happened right here. Experiences that give you a glimpse into the fullness of who he was. And I invite you to think about the places where the spirit and memories of your loved ones live too. As a toddler, John attended preschool right here in this building down the hall at the Massasoit Children's Center, as did all of us Kelly kids. Back then, he was an affectionate, imaginative, adorable little guy who left such an impression on his preschool teachers that decades later, after he died, we were moved to see them at his wake. They came to let us know they'd always remember the sweet, sensitive little boy he was. When John was older, he learned to scuba dive right here at the campus pool. He had a lifelong love of anything that brought him to the water, whether beaches, boats, or pools, and his tenacity as a young diver was a testament to his sense of adventure. Soon after, John, like all of us Kelly kids, joined the Primetime Players, a youth theater group that performed on this very stage. He was cast in several plays and often helped out behind the scenes, but his spotlight performance was starring as Sherlock Holmes, where his wit and creativity shined brightly, winning him many fans and some lifelong friends. John's success in theater soon led him to many musical performances as a teen, forming rock bands with his friends, always sharing his love of playing, writing, and listening to music. In high school, he joined the track and field team at Spelman, which practiced here on campus. He threw the discus and javelin, never afraid to try something new. And as a young adult, he attended community college here, honing his technical and vocational skills and developing his interests in literature, philosophy, and art. And then, just 3 years ago, on a late August night like this, John stood here on this campus at the annual Overdose Awareness Vigil, just like all of us are right now. He was working hard on his recovery at the time and came to the vigil to support others whose struggles he knew all too well. Unfortunately, as many of you also know, the grip of addiction can be unrelenting, and needed services are often elusive. After setbacks and barriers to treatment, John relapsed, overdosed, and after a harrowing hospitalization, he died of liver failure. He passed away encircled in love. Our whole family gathered with him, as we had been for weeks at his bedside. And ever since, our family has come back to this vigil and others. And I wish so much that John could be with us here too, lighting a candle, checking out the resources, bumping into an old friend, or offering a word of encouragement. Instead, we'll see his face, like so many of your loved ones, illuminated in the tribute. And I'll have to trust that he and all who we hold in our hearts forever is still here with us somehow. When John came to this vigil with my dad, he voiced his empathy for others who've also experienced problems with substance use, and his own sadness for others who'd lost their lives. He was deeply troubled by the impact addiction had on him and our family, by the pain faced by others and their families. He often urged others to get whatever help they needed. Unfortunately, he was so ashamed of the stigma of addiction that it often stopped him from getting the help he needed, despite how desperate we were to help him find it. For too long, and until it was too late, he believed it was a struggle to face alone. But we are not alone. Though it is heartache that brings many of us here tonight, it's also love that gathers us. Jamie Anderson says that grief is all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers in the corner of your eyes, in the lump of your throat, in the hollow of your chest. Grief is just love with no place left to go. So let's fill this space and all hurting places in our lives and communities with abundant love for those we are here to remember. May we fill it with compassion for those whose names and stories we may never know, whose paths we'd never cross, whose photos may not be shown, but whose humanity is also undeniable. Let us not forget the long histories of injustice that for many decades treated people suffering with addiction as though their lives did not matter. And let us remember that many families have not only lost loved ones to overdose, but also to drug-related violence, suicide, illnesses, injury, incarceration, and inequity. And that families and communities divided by addiction is also a painful form of loss. So let us open our hearts to all who've been impacted and remember to love ourselves too. Whether we're healing from grief or addiction or both, may we be gentle and forgiving, finding peace and comfort where we can, offering kindness and acceptance to ourselves and to those around us. We cannot evade the pain, and we may never find a satisfying answer to our if-onlys and our what-ifs. But we can find strength by standing side by side, building this community of empathy and courage, being unafraid to speak out, to defy the silence of stigma, and to create lasting change together. We know the change is desperately needed as the harm of overdose continues to claim many lives, with the annual death toll continuing to rise. When John attended this vigil, he saw a lot of familiar faces in the slideshow. When my sisters and I have come in his memory, we too have seen the names and faces of too many kids we've grown up with as well. And more are added each year. We'll never stop remembering those we've lost, but we must also work towards a future in which there are no more names to read and new candles to light each year. There are already so many great community programs that are changing and saving lives, like those represented here tonight. They need our support, and we need more of them. With more understanding of, access to, and resources to sustain pathways towards recovery, many of these deaths can be prevented, and others can be spared this grief. Together, we can widen our circles of compassion and address root causes of addiction. Together, we can share solutions and offer hope. I have to believe we can find the collective power to do this, in memory of those we've lost, in honor of all who continue to take steps forward in recovery, and in gratitude with all who help along the way. We are truly all in this together, and with our loved ones alive in our hearts, we are never, ever alone.
Thank you so much, Angela. The Kelly family is very special to us, so we appreciate you sharing your story. I'd like to introduce Brittany up to the stage to share her story.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm wicked nervous because I never do stuff like this. Last year, I sat at this vigil next to my boyfriend, Joe. I was 6 months pregnant with our second child. Our almost 2-year-old daughter, Aaliyah, was at home. We listened to a speaker share her personal story of her husband who had struggled with addiction for years and who passed away to an overdose, leaving her to raise her son alone. Joe looked at me with tears in his eyes and told me he did not want this to happen to our family. We both listened to this woman's story and could not hold back our tears. I think we both knew that this could be our reality. The vigil continued, and I could see in Joe's face that the woman's story stuck with him. We lit candles as we viewed a display of our loved ones' photographs, all who died as a result of their drug addictions. My grandmother looked at Joe and said to him, "I don't want to see your picture up there next year." The car ride home was sad. We reflected upon and talked about the woman who spoke of her husband. Joe and I had struggled for years with addiction and had seen firsthand how it rips families apart. The disease of addiction hit us hard in every aspect. A year prior to the vigil, my father died from alcoholism. 7 weeks later, my uncle died of a heroin overdose. We lost numerous friends over the years to addiction. We knew that any one of us could be next, but at the same time, we didn't think it would ever happen. Exactly 2 weeks after the vigil, Joe died of a fentanyl overdose. The saddest part of what I'm here to speak to you about is that my story is not unique. This devastation is happening to families all around the country. I believe many have had addiction affect their family in one form or another, and those who have not are so very fortunate. All of you here this evening have lost someone in your life because of drugs. Our stories are all different, yet they're all the same. We loved someone, we fought hard to keep him or her safe, and we lost them to this disease. We all grieve differently. A huge part of my grieving process has been guilt. I constantly ask myself, what could I have done different? How could I have saved you? Another part of my grieving process is anger. How could you leave us? How could you make me raise our 2 daughters alone? Sometimes I feel sad that Joe never got the chance to fully recover and live his life. Sad that he never got the chance to meet his daughter Olivia and watch our daughters grow. Then there are times where I feel a sense of peace that he's no longer struggling. What I am learning is that it's okay to feel these emotions. I cannot predict when I'm going to have a good day or a bad day, and that's okay. We still need to live our lives and not let the death of those we lost consume us. Instead, we need to honor them and share our stories, as painful as they are, so maybe we can help someone else who's experiencing a similar situation. There's a stigma surrounding addiction. I see it a lot on social media. People who do not have to deal with the pain of losing someone to this disease post comments like, "It will never be my child. My children will know right from wrong." They made the decision to stick a needle in their arm. On the day of Joe's passing, I woke up to get ready for work. Joe had cleaned the whole house the night before and packed my lunch. He loved taking care of our home. He took our daughter Aaliyah to the zoo and then went to the gym. He had dinner ready for me when I got home from work. He gave our daughter a bath and put her to bed. Does this sound like a worthless junkie to you? To me, it sounds like a person who loved his family unconditionally but could not escape the hold and power of addiction. I feel the stigma of addiction makes it so much harder for addicts to reach out when they're struggling. Encouraging words of support, understanding, and compassion instead of shaming and demeaning an addict could literally save someone's life. Something needs to change. I'm not sure what, but I think we need to start by educating our children at a very young age on not what could happen, but what is actually happening. We live in a generation where parents are finding their children dead at alarming rates due to drug addiction. My children will not be sheltered from what is happening. I'm honest with them about their father's passing, and I will make sure that they know that it could happen to anyone, and that they should not feel ashamed because their father died of a drug overdose. Aaliyah and Olivia will know that their father loved them. They will know he was a good person, and they will know that he fought hard to beat his addiction. They will join me as we advocate for awareness and treatment. They will grow to understand and have empathy for those who struggle with addiction. I hope we all find strength and peace as we remember those we've lost, and we all continue to honor our loved ones by moving forward with a mission to end addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany and Aaliyah. You did a great job. She's not afraid at all, which is wonderful. With that, I'd like to introduce Amanda to come up and speak of her story of recovery.
Okay, I'm so nervous, sorry. At the end of my active addiction, I was living in a car in the middle of winter. I spent my days finding ways and means to get more just to be able to function. I was exhausted. I knew something had to drastically change. I had already lost my 2 kids, and I used for years over the guilt. When I realized I was going to lose my youngest child forever, I was finally desperate enough to make the changes necessary to better my life. I wasn't going to allow this disease to take any more from me. I'd lost enough. The fear of losing another child to the system gave me the strength and motivation to take any and all steps to get clean and start my recovery journey. Desperate for change, I reached out to people I knew with significant recovery in their lives and took the suggestions that were given to me. I had tried to get clean many times in the past, but at that point I just wasn't willing. This time was different. I finally felt free. I had no reservations, and the obsession to use had gone away. I changed people, places, and things. I wasn't afraid to ask for help because I knew I couldn't do this alone. I know the stigma that comes with being an addict, but I also know there is so much more help available now than ever before. Going to meetings and surrounding myself with other people just trying to find a new way of life made things in early recovery more bearable. Today I am present for my life. My mom supports me and wants me around. It means the world to me to be able to be the daughter she knew I could be, and to be the mom that I know I can be. I am able to complete all tasks asked of me to get my child back. I have the drive and the ability to take steps to better my life. Because of recovery, I have a job. I complete a Recovery Coach Academy with the desire to help people see that there is hope and a way out. I never thought the life I have today would be possible. I am grateful to be able to appreciate the gifts that I'm given every day. I know how hard it is to get out of the grips of active addiction, to feel so alone, like there's no way out. But I'm living proof that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you, Amanda. I'd like to welcome up Scott to the stage.
How you doing? My name's Scott. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. Grateful to be here, and thank you everybody for coming. I grew up in an alcoholic home with an alcoholic father. I grew up with that physical and mental abuse, and that brought me to, was part of the reason why I started using drugs and alcohol. I started using Oxycontin and heroin at a young age. For me, drugs took me away from me. It killed the pain I felt inside, the mental and emotional pain that I had. It made me feel okay. And from as far back as I can remember, the only thing I ever wanted was to feel okay. And that for moments at a time, that's what the drugs and alcohol did. With that being said, it's 11 years ago today, to the day, that I overdosed over on the east side of Brockton at the Save-A-Lot parking lot. I was 20 years old. Weeks before I did overdose, I accepted many things. I accepted the fact that I was a drug addict. I accepted the fact that I was a heroin addict, and I accepted the fact that this was my life and this was how I was going to die. A few weeks before I overdosed, I was contemplating suicide because I couldn't live that way anymore. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I just wanted the pain to go away. And, the day I overdosed, I feel like today that was God. And I overdosed, and it was his way of saying, is this really what you want? And I woke up in the Brockton hospital, and I remember waking up, and I looked to the left, there was my mother, and I looked over to my right, and there was my sister Caitlin, my best friend. And that was the first time in my life that I realized it wasn't just hurting myself. My mother and my sister looked run down, tired, and beat up, and that was the first time in my life that I realized it wasn't just me. I wasn't just hurting myself, and it woke me up a little bit. And, from there, the next day I was sectioned to Bridgewater for the second time. I spent 30 days there in Bridgewater, and from Bridgewater, to be honest with you, I thought everything was good and I was going to go home, and that wasn't the case. Nobody wanted me. So I had a great counselor in Bridgewater, and he said, Scott, I have a bed for you in Tewksbury. Why don't you go up there? And I did. And I went to Tewksbury, cab, and I waited there for months. And somebody told me about the North Cottage program in Norton. And I had the gift of desperation at this point to stay sober and do something different. And I waited to get into North Cottage, and it was one of the best things I ever did. When I got over to the North Cottage, I got my GED. I learned how to pay bills. I learned how to get a job. I learned how to be an adult. All these things I didn't know how to do before. And more importantly, I stopped doing things my way, and I started to listen. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but I did. And they told me to get a group. They told me to get a sponsor. They told me to go through the 12 steps. And I did. And I stayed sober. It wasn't easy the whole time. It wasn't easy at all. There were points and times where I wanted to leave, where I wanted to give up. I couldn't deal with things anymore. I couldn't deal with sobriety. I couldn't deal with the way I was feeling, etc. And there was probably about 9-10 months sober, something like that, and that was it. I had enough. I was at the halfway house at this point, and I had enough. I couldn't deal with these feelings anymore, these emotions that I've been hiding for years, etc. with the drugs. And I packed my bags. I was getting ready to leave, and my phone rang. And it was my cousin Steven. And we talked. He asked me how I was doing. I said, good. He said, how you really doing? And I broke down, and I told him, how I was doing. And Steven was just like me. And Steven reminded me nicely, Scott, you know what's going to happen if you go back out. You know what's waiting for you if you go back out. And it touched me, and he hit me, and he was right. So I stayed. A week later, I get a phone call. My cousin Steven picked up one more time. And he overdosed and died. And Still very hard. That was one of the hardest days of my life, definitely one of the hardest days of my life in sobriety. And he told me to stay. You know, Stephen Pacheco, as well as Shanna Duggan, Lance Fisk, Paul St. Andre, Bobby Terrell, and there's many, many more people that you're going to see up here tonight that I grew up with, that are part of my life and a part of my story to this day, that through me live on forever. And it's because of them. They're part of the reason why I stay sober today, because of those people. Excuse me. Because of those people and my family, and more importantly, that gift of desperation that I got, 10 years ago to stay sober hasn't gone away. And I keep that close. And I remind myself often by telling my story and talking about these people I just mentioned of what's still out there for me if I choose to go back. And I don't forget it. Today, like I said, I'm active in my recovery and I'm active in my sobriety. And I give back as much as I can. And I still, to this day, I sit down, shut up, and I listen. Because when I start doing things my way, they don't work out too well. I'm here today to share my story, to share their story, and to let you guys know that there is hope. There is hope out there. I can tell you from experience that getting sober and staying sober is one of the hardest things I have ever done, but it's the best thing I ever did. Today I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm available, I'm there for my family and my friends. It's an amazing thing. And the biggest reason why I love coming here and doing this is because, just like there's another place, the castle I go to all the time, is I love speaking to adolescents. I got sober at 20. I'm 31 today. I've been 11 years sober, thank God. And I never heard somebody come into a program or treatment facility and tell me they got sober young. And that's why I try to share as much as I can, because I do understand that it is unique, and I try to give back, and I want to hopefully just catch one person that hears me. I love coming here tonight. This is great. I think that the conversation of opiate abuse needs to continue. I feel like so many times we start talking about it and it stops there. We need this conversation to continue, as I think it has been for a little while now, and we're seeing some progress and change. We need to continue to talk about it. So thank you for having me, and thank you for being here tonight.
I'd like to invite Vicki back up to sing a song before we show the slideshow.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda. I'm the Assistant Director of the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative. And each year, the collaborative collects photographs from community members across southeastern Massachusetts of loved ones who have lost their battle with addiction. These photographs are compiled into a video slideshow and played to music. In 2013, our original slideshow contained 22 photographs that played to a single song. Today, this video will include 322 individuals who have left this world too soon. Following the slideshow tonight, we'll move outside to light our candles, so please follow all of the volunteers and they'll direct you outside and provide you with the candles. While collecting photographs this summer, I was contacted by an individual within the community, and her words sat heavy on my heart. She told me how she wished she could send an updated photograph of her loved one. I thought about the purpose of photographs and how we use them to help capture a moment, to make time stand still. For many of us, we wish the time to capture these moments of happiness and celebration and peace with our loved ones would return. However, these captured memories are what we're left with. My hope for you tonight is, as the photograph of your loved one appears, that you can take a moment to remember not what addiction took away, but the positive influence these people had in your life. In spite of this pain and loss that we all share tonight, I hope you can find it within your heart to see this vigil as a reminder of hope. Hope to trust that there is power in community and that together we can change the outcome of this epidemic. We'll continue to fight back every day in the name of the loved ones we have lost far too soon, and to find hope from those in recovery for the ones still suffering. Thank you.
just 'cause you can't see it. To me, it's not there. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Who cares if one more light goes out in a sky of a million stars? Flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out?
So on behalf of the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative and our partners, we thank you all for joining us this evening. If anyone would like to stay and join Teen Challenge in a prayer, they're going to be available up here. But thank you so much for coming. We hope to see you next year.